Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footy. Sunday morning, the sort of Sunday morning ritual returns. I think you and Phil did I don't know what time you did it last week, but um,
Last week we did on Sunday.
Sunday,
Yeah,
8 a.m. last week? Was it that early? Or
I think so.
did Phil let you sleep in a little bit?
I may be mixing up the. Yeah, no, I think it was Sunday, 8 a.m.
Well done. Well done. Well, we're keeping that ritual alive, win, lose, or draw. Unfortunately, it's a pretty similar, probably a pretty similar vibe to last week, at least as far as the end result goes, even though we had a lot more optimism, I think, in the middle of this game than we did against FC Dallas. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely looking way better after that first half, but you have to play consistent for 90 minutes.
And there's a lot of, I would say, a different amount, I think, of feelings after this one. We'll talk about it when we do the pod recording, but I had people talking to me at halftime about how they felt this was potentially the best half we've played. Going back and looking at the stats and looking at all the actual data, it's interesting that was the feeling. But part of that, I think, was facing this Minnesota team that was in a low block. Part of that was that maybe that we looked really good against a team that we have traditionally not looked that great against, at least in what their style of play was.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely a good showing on the first half, and I agree, and we can talk more about it, but it looked like it was so far one of the best games City has
Especially
played. But
compared to against Dallas, right? I mean,
yeah, for sure.
but we will not just look at the loss last night, Santi, but we got to talk a little bit about Aston Villa coming up on Wednesday. I know it's only a friendly, and I know it doesn't mean anything, but it's still a match. Different vibes from the it feels like to me like different vibes from the friendly that City 2 had against Bayer Leverkusen in just about every single way.
Yeah.
Where it's not just the weather, but you had all the promise and all the hope and the excitement of a new team. All the possibilities were there against Leverkusen. And this one kind of just seems like, especially because of the loss against Minnesota, but more so just how the season is and the fact that we're not going to be making the playoffs, and we know that in July, it just seems, I don't know, flat a little bit.
What do you mean? We can still get 100% of the points.
Would that
And
even
get
be
in.
enough at this point? I mean,
It will be, but yeah, it's just
we'd still need help.
yeah, not mathematically out, but
Right.
But yeah, it's just you have to get a lot of points.
Yeah, and I know the mention at this point of playoffs is just going to evoke eye rolling and groaning by the fan base, which is justifiable.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, like, and I think the team is also aware. Like, yeah, it's probably very difficult now.
Yeah,
but I'm sure they'll keep playing and trying to do their best. But I think it will be for a different purpose now.
Well, I do wonder, and that might be a good segue to actually start the pod recording, because I thought when I first saw the starting 11 that we're going to start with in a moment, I thought it was with that in mind. Like, this is an opportunity to shift things up a little bit, to continue playing the kids, so to speak, and kind of have a little bit of a different look and utilize the new players immediately. Yeah. So, you ready to get rolling?
Let's do it.
Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker, joined as always by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, for another edition of Fallout. And unfortunately, another edition of a Fallout looking at a City loss. 2-1 loss against Minnesota United. The Loons came to Energizer Park on Saturday night, and it was a good start. It was a very frustrating second half. And ultimately, it just ends with another dropped 3 points at home. Couldn't even get back to the draw. An overall, I would say, good/decent performance, marred by a couple critical mistakes that if you're a good team, you don't make these critical mistakes in a close, tight game like this, and you're able to build off of what you start with, which was a good performance in the first half. So let's dive into all of it. But before we do, Santi, You were on the call. What are your thoughts? What's the vibe going into this one?
Yeah, no, obviously disappointment after that promising first half, just seeing a couple of mistakes that ended up in giving up the 3 points to Minnesota. But to me, after the first half, it looked like City was on track to get its second home win in a row, something that has not happened this year yet. But you have to play 90 minutes, and that didn't happen last night.
And Minnesota, like we were worried about, they are not a team this year that goes on winless streaks. They've only had 2 winless streaks this season, one of 2 games, one of 3 games, and they ended their winless streak here at 2 games. So they were able to bounce back, and something that we haven't been able to do is string together or prevent winless streak after winless streak, basically. And this was another match where St. Louis lost points from a winning position, where St. Louis was able to gather a lead, and then they lost all 3 points, not able to come back. But it did start fairly promising, Santi. So like we usually do, our starting 11. We had Roman Berkey in net. Devin Padelford made his City debut at left back. Haziel Orozco and Timo Baumgartel were our center backs, and Conrad Wallem was our right back. Edu Leuven and Thomas Ostrak were our central midfielders, with Celio, Marcel Hartl, Sangbin Zhang, and Klaus as our attackers. A lot to dive into with this starting 11. And I think this was, if not excitement, it definitely evoked a sense of change, a sense of following up on Lutz Pfannenstiel's comments last week after the FC Dallas match, where he essentially called the team embarrassing, really said that he derided the performance, talking about players who are playing for contracts, not really actually showing that, not looking like they wanted to play for contracts. And so things that would be having difficult decisions this week, change that would be needed. There was a lot of, I would say, openness and honesty. And so I'll be interested to see what Lutz has to say this week. But the result of his comments led to this starting 11. So you're looking at 2 new acquisitions, Sangbin and Devin Padelford, immediately into the starting 11. You keep Haziel Orozco in the starting 11 and you move him to center back, which is his first time starting at center back for City. And you keep Conrad Wallem in the lineup, in this case at right back. And I think this was his first start at right back in a back 4 for City. So he's a wing back and a central midfielder by nature. But using him in this role, David Critchley said post-game on Conrad Wallem starting at right back, this was a tactics-based thing, nothing more. Quote, we knew Conrad is a more natural central midfielder that could play the fullback, but also step into that central area quite a lot for us, which I thought he did very well in the first half. So it was a system decision. So that's the first thing, getting that out of the way. If Thomas Totland, it was system-based, tactics-based, had nothing to do with Totland's performance, at least from Critchley's comments. Other notes on this starting 11 and the matchday roster in general that I made were that only 3 total players on this matchday roster were on our supplemental roster. Haziel Orozco, Devin Padelford, and Ben Lunt. 2 of those were starters, and the other was our backup goalkeeper. The point being here is I know there's been a lot made recently about our usage and the players on our supplemental roster that we've had to use. In this case, guys like Josh Yarrow and Akil Watts, they didn't even make the matchday roster because of the other players, the 17 players fit from our senior roster that we were able to employ, and the utilization of the continued use of Orozco and inserting Padelford into the starting 11. All this to say is the supplemental roster should be the focus in very limited capacities. You can question the usage of a guy like Caden Glover, who's on the supplemental roster, taking up a roster slot, but he hasn't appeared at all this season, even given our injuries and our short-term loan needs for attackers. You can question things like that. But as a whole, the supplemental roster is intended to supplement, to do exactly that. Supplement your senior roster in very limited fashion. The MLS roster rules make it a little bit tenuous with injuries, especially in longer term. So there's no kind of short-term injury list that you could receive tentative, like temporary relief in that regard. But as City rounds into health, they only had 3 players out for this game. All 3 were center backs, Henry Kessler, Joachim Nilsson, and Michael Wenzel. They were able to bring in a much more loaded up roster, a much more loaded lineup. So what did you make of this starting 11 and the overall roster that we took into this one?
Yeah, so definitely the fact that your injury list was down to three players, when you think about only three players from the supplemental roster being on the match roster, that makes sense because you have a lot of players available, a lot of your senior players available. But I like the lineup. The only question mark I had at the beginning was Walem as a right back not being his natural position. Was thinking about, hey, what happened with Totland? I know earlier in the week, he on Tuesday he didn't do full practice with the team, and I remember talking to him, and he said, "Yeah, I was hit on my ribs, so it's more like a rest day, getting better, and I'll be back in training." So maybe I thought it was because of that, but Chris Lee clarified that it was more of a tactical decision, and Walem did well. But aside from that, everybody playing in positions they know. I like Orozco playing in his natural position as center
Hmm.
back, getting a chance there, and was excited about seeing that duo of Tomas Ostrak and Edu Leuven as the defensive midfielders. Was a little bit surprised to see Celio back in the starting 11 just because of his injury, but he didn't show any signs of pain or anything like that. But I like that everybody, aside from Walem, everybody was playing in their position. There wasn't anything improvised or trying to slide a guy into a new position. So I like that from the beginning.
And I think this speaks to Salio keeping up his fitness while he was injured, that shoulder injury. So that, I mean, that would have been the reason to me on why he wouldn't have started or why he might have needed a sub out early, especially with the way he plays. Is his fitness, if that had suffered or taken a step back, or if he wasn't able to train with his cardio while he was injured and recovering, because it was always a pain tolerance thing
Hmm.
for Salio. Thankfully, it wasn't a damage structural issue. So it was really good to see Salio back in here. The other thing that I think a lot of people made note of with the starting 11, and especially our friend Drew Young, is Jean de Silva. Jean de Silva not only didn't start this game with Salio returning, he didn't start this game with new arrival Songbin Zhang having
Hmm.
slotted right into the starting 11. Santi, have we already reached the end of the road for Jean de Silva as a City player? His contract's up at the end of this year. He was brought in just a few months ago, and we're now not only seeing a refusal or a lack of desire to start him when Salio is injured. In a potential perfect opportunity on that left mid, left wing side, now we're seeing him be supplanted by a newer arrival in Songbin Zhang. And Songbin is, I would say, more of a natural right-sided player, a right midfielder in that role, and his ability to get in behind the lines. But that's kind of what we expected from Jean de Silva, is his ability to use his speed, get in behind the lines, whether it's the left or the right side. It feels like his time here is over before it began almost.
I think so. And to go a step further, when Sam Bin Young was up, Jan de Silva could have been one of the options, which is
Yep.
why I told you I didn't like those substitutions. But yeah, it could be a sign that his time with City it's over. Yeah, not even consider with so many options and the substitutions that went on. Yeah, it tells me that maybe he's not a factor. But at that point, if he's not a factor, why 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 do you have him on the game day roster to begin with? You know.
Yeah, and it's not to say that he couldn't have been an option, but it is notable that, down a goal with down to 10 men, you make the subs that you make, that especially the whole, and we'll talk about that in line with the rest of the match. But looking just at this, who was left on our bench with Ben Lunt, Kyle Hebert, Thomas Totland, and John De Silva. That's one attacking player who's not utilized. When you do utilize Cedric Toyshirt, Simon Betcher, and those were our other two attackers. So you have, I mean, it's notable. That's at the very least. We could probably harp on what it could mean all day, but a trend and a story is definitely developing in the lack of usage and especially the lack of starts given to Jean de Silva. So with Songbin having arrived, I think that's my takeaway is, at least right now, he's immediately preferred over Jean de Silva. And it kind of makes sense if you read the tea leaves or look at you could craft this narrative, I would say, where the signing of Jean de Silva came at the 11th hour of last winter's transfer window. Obviously, we needed somebody to come in to help, especially with the injuries we had. It's debatable on whether Jean de Silva was first, second, or third choice in bringing somebody in, especially with how late in the game that actually occurred. But now we know that Song Bin Jong has been the target of City for 3-ish transfer windows, dating back at least to last summer. And that is a clear indication to me of, ahead of signing a player, you have certain desires for certain players, right? So you have your target list. You say, really want to get this guy, and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. And then you have certain opportunities, certain moments where if they don't come to fruition, you kind of need somebody. And so you have to pivot to your second or third option. Kind of seems like that's the story here that we're facing with Silva and Song Bin as it relates to those two.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Silva at the end of the year. But I think the lack of playing time and the signing of Sam Bing, I think that's very telling. And we know that at the end of the year, with so many players with options, there is going to be a lot of movement, and I think he's going to be one of those.
Yeah. Last question, really quick before we get into the match. Ryan Biles asked, do we know Falu's status? Will he be here before the next MLS game? What we do know is that this past weekend, Falu Fall said goodbye to his previous club, Fredrikstad. They gave him kind of a pre-match send-off celebration kind of a thing, recognizing his contributions to their team in their bid for the Norwegian Cup, for instance, that they won. And so he was honored. He is expected to join City as soon as his paperwork is complete and filed. It's the permit, it's the ITC, it's the thing that allows you to work in the U.S., and for soccer players, it's the thing that allows you to train with the team. He's not allowed to train, much less be in the U.S., political things aside from immigration. The paperwork has to be sorted before he's here and can train. Soon as that's done, he'll be with the club. And now, since St. Louis has a 2-week break before their next MLS match, the hope is that he will at least be in training ahead of the Nashville match on August 9th, if not available to play or possibly feature or start. He was mid-season with his previous club, so similar, I think, to Songbin and to Devin Padelford. You hope that the fitness is there and he's able to make a more immediate impact. But I do think it is still too soon to say we can expect him for the Nashville match.
I was hoping, and honestly, that was high hopes that he would be available for this friendly against Aston Villa. Very tight timeline, but it would have been good at least. He will have probably not play, but at least just have like a presentation, or at least him being at the game and waving to the crowd. But I don't think that's gonna happen, and we're gonna have to wait until August 9th against Nashville.
It could still happen. They did the same thing, I think, with I want to say Cedric Toyshirt or Marcel Hartl, maybe both of them. But if he's able to arrive, it wouldn't surprise me if they give kind of a little nod at halftime to Falu if he's able to make it to the U.S. before Wednesday night. As far as being with the team in training, though, definitely not Aston Villa. Hoping just to see him in training before Nashville. But Santi, plenty to talk about in this one. Let's circle back into some of the good and the bad and the ugly we saw in this game. I mentioned Songbin. I mentioned Devin Padelford. Bright spots in this one to me. Songbin, we saw some of the flashes of his ability to get in behind the lines. On that right side, it gives us speed. It gives us a little bit of a width. But also, I thought Songbin was doing a lot of his best work in the channels. So it makes me think that when a guy like Thomas Totland or even Conrad Wallum playing off of him, we were wondering how would that right side look with Songbin, with an attacking minded right back, whether it's Wallum or Totland, who we thought. I thought this had a lot of flashes of brilliance for what we can expect. Songbin was good on the ball. He had good pace, good speed. We saw the one shot that he had early in the first half that was kind of showing that ability to get in behind the lines and take the ball in stride. But it also left that space open on the right wing side for a right back to be pushing up a little higher. I felt the spacing on our right side was pretty good overall, both when we had possession in the final third, but also in transition. And then Devin Padelford, I was pretty impressed by Padelford. This kid was very good on the ball. He was very good with his spacing, and Santi, his throw-ins were absolutely marvelous. I talked last week when we were previewing Minnesota, saying that one of the big keys to Minnesota's game were throw-ins and deep free kicks. And we saw Minnesota both, we saw them highlight both of these features or both these facets to their game, where Dane St. Clair had a lot of these deep free kicks that he took from just Minnesota's side of midfield line. You had a lot of the big throw-ins that like Michael Boxall took, but Devin Padelford seems like he took all of that from Minnesota and now he's bringing it to St. Louis with those two epic throw-ins that he had. This could add different facets to City's game, and I'm not saying it's going to net us goal after goal after goal, but it does create a little bit of a dangerous situation in an otherwise area that St. Louis really never had much of a bite to with those deep throw-ins. Padelford had a really good showing for that. And also his spacing, his willingness to get higher. I noticed that at times he ended up on the front line when we were transitioning the ball up. So he's willing to take that space ahead of himself in that attacking-minded fullback role. And in those times, I saw that Eddie Leuven, as the 6, would take the space of where Padelford had vacated. So those little moments where it doesn't really amount to much, or it didn't amount to much in this game, but you still see the potential. You see the spacing, you see the communication. That adds to the effectiveness of Eddie Leuven in that 6 role, who can take the spacing. And Chris Durkin had done it a lot as well, where he fell back whenever some of the fullbacks or the center backs even pushed higher. Padelford is showing that ability on the left side. You had Wallem and Totland, can do it on the right side. So that offers a really good facet to City to even out their play. And the quality that Padelford brought, I thought was exciting in, I think, the expectations we should have for him, which is the 22-year-old on the supplemental roster on loan. So now we see a little bit of where City's probably projecting him. This game also, I mentioned Orozco starting at center back. You mentioned that it's his natural position. You're starting them over Kyle Hebert and Josh Yarrow and Akil Watts even at left back. So now you get a little bit of that depth chart sneak peek in where we are in this season, and the fact that we want to see these newer players in Orozco and Padelford over some of these known quantities we have, like Hebert, Yarrow, and Watts, in roles that they otherwise would have played earlier in the season.
Yeah, I really like what Padelford did. Great game. I was looking at his stats. He was perfect on tackles and on dribbling tacklers. Had 3 shot creating actions, 3 progressive carriers. He showed a lot of promise, and obviously he played against his former team, and a few times you could tell that he kind of knew where players were going to occupy spaces.
Yep.
But it's a promising start. Hopefully, we can see more of him in the next few games. And I just saw a question on the chat, Matt. He's only a loan for 2025, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, he's on loan for 2025. There was no purchase option announced, but I think the expectation is that there is a purchase option. That typically accompanies loans. It's very rare that a purchase option doesn't accompany a loan. I also saw like kind of speculation, at least, that did we take Padelford on loan as a condition of Songbin's purchase? That's definitely speculation that has no real factual basis, at least that we know of, although it is an interesting notion to kind of clear Padelford off of their roster. I don't think Minnesota is starving for a supplemental roster slot right now, and so that doesn't really seem to be a major need, though we are only like 3 days into the transfer window being open, so I guess anything's possible. This, to me, though, does point to Padelford being utilized and seen as an MLS caliber left back, as opposed to our speculation a couple weeks ago when this news first broke that we might see Orozco used with Reed at left back, and then Padelford could see time with City 2 in kind of seeing what we have kind of a situation. But instead, we see Padelford thrown right into the fire, and we see Jay Reed left off the roster entirely. So City continuing to search for an option at left back, but at least at this stage in the game right now, one game in is a very little sample size, and Padelford subbed out in the second half. So it's way too soon to say Padelford has the left back job, but I don't think it's too much of a leap to say he may be the current preferred option at left back, at least for the near
as long
term.
as he continues performing, he could earn that job. And the fact that Jaden Reed wasn't even on the roster last night, it's also telling. And yeah, you had the option of moving Orozco to left back if needed, which ended up happening. But yeah, it looks like
Hmm.
Bedell for so far is getting a spot on the team and considered as an starter. So good performance. Obviously, after he had to come out, things changed, which is unfortunate. But good start for
Yeah.
him and Sangbin.
And other than that, were there any notable players that you really thought performed extremely well? I know Conrad Wallem had a good game at right back. I think he performed really well in that role. Our midfield, I think, has to continue to receive praise. Edu Leuven and Tomas Ostrak. I loved how in the first half and everything kind of broke down in the second half. So I'm going to use primarily the first half, maybe the beginning of the second half as this. I thought Edu Leuven was kept more as a true tried and true six in this game. He didn't get high, at least from what I was watching, as often as he had previously done in years past. But to me, this speaks to the effectiveness of Thomas Ostrak as that potential box to box, good on the ball, less so good as a true
Mm-hmm.
six. And so this is using the players to their own strengths. Leuven is a great six to me. He is a great midfielder. He is an above average 10. We don't see him often in that role. So I hesitate to say he's a great 10. I just think he's best utilized as a 6 when possible because he's great at roaming. He's good with vision and awareness. His spacing is great. He understands when players vacate areas, what he needs to cover. He's physical. He's good. He's got good passing. All the qualities I think that would make a great 6 in perpetuity. We just haven't really been able to use him there because we haven't had this other great option as the box to box. So he ends up playing off as the double pivot with Chris Durkin a lot, with Alfredo Morales. And so in years past, maybe with Jabula Blom. So with this one, Leuven stayed back to me a little deeper, and you allowed Tomas Ostrak to do what he's been doing so well in the past few games, take that box to box role, and it actually led to the Leuven PK. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but Ostrak's ability to get high as well as defend when needed in that box to box, to me, led directly to him earning that PK, earning the penalty. They gave us that first lead in the first half, but the midfield duo of Leuven and Ostrak continued to
Yeah,
impress me.
yeah, it was a good performance by both of them, and uh, Leuven covering when Ostrak was supporting the attack, and Ostrak, as you mentioned, box to box, and yeah, although he will go and try in chance creation and be involved in the offense, he will quickly return when needed, and he won a couple of balls that way when he had to come back from attacking positions and support the defense. So I really like what they did. I have always been a proponent of using Leuven as a 10, but I really like what he did last night. He was very involved. He led the team in touches, also also led the team in progressive carries. So good showing.
Passes
And
completed,
yeah,
accurate
yeah,
passing.
he
Yeah.
led in a lot of categories, and it was also his first start in a while. So hopefully he will continue ramping up minutes from now on.
Yeah, as FODMOB has our top 2 rated players as Leuven and Ostrak. I think Ostrak had the most dribbles in the match. Leuven led in just about every single passing category. I loved how we worked our midfield, and it's especially encouraging because David Critchley post game was talking about how Minnesota took away a lot of the midfield options. So where they weren't able to, I guess, get the ball through into the final third through that midfield regularly, they had to use the wings, they had to use the wide areas to progress it into the final third and actually generate shot opportunities. Leuven and Ostrak were still heavily involved in this matchup, and they were quality on the ball whenever they had the opportunity. Beyond that, just holistically, the team in the first half won the field tilt battle. They won the possession battle. And it's not too surprising that they won the possession battle. We were expecting them because Minnesota is the lowest average possession team in Major League Soccer. So that wasn't surprising that we led possession battle. Minnesota didn't want the ball. They wanted us to have it. They're a counterattacking team, so they dropped back, and that's their style. But winning the field tilt battle is also an important note, as well as winning the shot battle in the first half. And in the game in general. So the field tilt looks at how much you spend in the final third. Can you get the ball into the final third, passes into, within, in the opposition penalty area? So we expected them to win possession, but we outshot them 14-8 and 5-4 on goal. And then we won the run of play XG 0.59 to 0.13, in addition to winning the battle of time spent in the final third. So in the first half, we had 52 passes in the final third to just 15 by Minnesota. And we had 24 touches in the opposition box to just 6 by Minnesota. These are big differences in the first half. So we were successful in getting the ball into the final third, generating shot opportunities, especially in comparison to Minnesota. And we didn't light everything on fire. In the first half, we only had 0.45 XG from the run of play. So we had that the penalty kick that added and inflated that number a little bit. But Minnesota only had, I think it was 0.03 XG in the first half. Very low. So the field tilt battle, not just us spending time, but us limiting their time in the final third. We limited not just their time, we limited their availability to get quality shots off. We limited just about everything they had to offer in their own final third in the first half. So this is a holistically good performance by St. Louis in the first half on both sides of the ball. And I think that led into the perception of this being one of our better first halves in general. Got a good start, good intensity. I felt like we've had better halves, but not very many better halves this season. Maybe the Galaxy and I want to say maybe that Earthquake game, or one of the more recent games for the Portland Timbers game. I thought that was a really good first half. That was a really good half as well. But less than, you could probably count the number of good quality halves on one hand is the problem. And that's
we were talking about it on the broadcast. It was a really good half, very complete. But at the same time, I was like, well, it's just the first half. And even Critch himself has said, like, when we get a consistent 90-minute performance, it's when we start getting wins. So I was like a little cautious. I said, let's wait. Let's see what happens on the second half. What Minnesota will do, if they will make any substitutions or change the way they are playing. And yeah, there were some specific things that led into Minnesota scoring and then the red card. But yeah, it just was like two different halves. First, great first half, as we said, one of the best this year. But then the second half was the total opposite.
And that was our continual struggle in the second half. So some of the bad things that I noted were obviously our continued struggle with teams that play us in a low block, that drop 5 defenders back. Critchley called it post-game a 5-4-1 or a 5-3-2, similar to how Dallas defended. And it wasn't a surprise. We fully previewed Minnesota to be doing exactly this, and their desire to play only on the counter. St. Louis, I think, mitigated it fairly well in the first half, but when it came to the second half, not just with the red card shown to Durkin and going down to 10 men, that exacerbated the issue. But I think Minnesota just came out stronger in the second half, using some of their subs to keep fresh legs. They made halftime subs that I think helped to invigorate their team. I don't want to say they managed the heat and humidity better than us, but it was, I think, a tactical battle between Eric Ramsey and David Critchley that I do think you have to give the nod to Eric Ramsey and how his team weathered the second half better than ours. And that's not even adding in the couple critical mistakes that what I said earlier, maybe even before we started, but good teams don't make those kinds of mistakes that St. Louis made in the second half. They don't make the red card dogzo foul. They don't make a windmill motion with their hand when the ball's coming in that Orozco ended up making. It's good. It's players who have been good for us that made boneheaded decisions. And those boneheaded decisions cost us 3 points, because I think other than that, we didn't have a stellar second half, but it wasn't anything where I was super concerned about us giving away a goal or our inability to score a goal ourselves. It felt like a 50-50 battle in the second half for up until the red card. And I don't think that part might be escaping a lot of people, because you remember the two moments, the red card and the handball that led to our loss. Before that, it felt like a 50-50 moment in the second half, and we had obviously won the first half.
Before that red card, even though Minnesota came out better, like they weren't creating a lot, and it still looked like City was controlling the game, and it just looked like a matter of fact that they were going to score the second at some point. and take away the game. But yeah, just the specific plays, call it bad luck, or the substitutions that are made maybe change the game. But it's tough to have a great first half, and then you come out for the second half and things can change so quickly in a game you are controlling.
Yeah, and that this one sits on Critchley a little bit in that management of the second half. You can't do a whole lot about having to dictate the pace of play, dictate the game when you're down to 10 men. But before that, I think this is another one of those stories where there is an area of improvement that can be done in managing the game, whether you look at halftime subs or not, and writing out a plan that had worked when the other team is making adjustments that flip the script just a little bit from that first half. But in the first half in general, because that's our favorite part of the game. So let's talk about a couple things with that. Loved how we started. 3 corner kicks earned in the first 2 minutes. The 3 big shot opportunities that I noted, shot opportunities that I noted were at 8 minutes with Conrad Wallum crossing it up to Salio far post. Salio took it in stride and hit the side netting. Thought that was good in our ability not just to get a good cross in, but the timing and the location of the cross, as well as finding a player far post, which often eludes us, our ability to get the ball into the far post behind the defenders who are all kind of collapsing near the ball. That was great. Salio had great speed, and that's showing the purpose of Salio. Great speed, great timing on the ball, just couldn't connect. And then on that same front of speedy wingers, on the other side, 17 minutes, you had Songbin Zhang with his first opportunity for City that almost blew the lid off the place. And it was like the ball was going in slow motion across the goal line as it went just wide, because that ball, if it had eyes, it could have just found its way into the net. It was good timing. It was a good capture on the ball by Songbin, and it was almost the thing that sent City fans crazy.
Yeah, that would have been amazing. Him scoring on his debut with the team, playing against his former team, will have been an amazing feeling for Energizer Park. But yeah, it just looked like the goal was about to come. City creating chances, doing everything right, and it was just a matter of minutes.
Well, I think the 17-minute mark was a great moment, but I think our best chance to me was at 23 minutes when Devin Padelford had a great move, beat the defender 1v1 to the end line, and then served up across to Klaus that was cleared off the keeper's line by a defender. This ball had beaten Dane St. Clair easily. The spacing was perfect on Klaus's header, and it was just cleared away. Great play by both Padelford and Klaus on this one. And this is the one to me that should have netted us a goal of everything in the first half.
Yeah, that was a Boxall in the right place at the right moment to clear that
Mm-hmm.
away. But yeah, no, great play by Pedelfor and Klaus with the header. Just unlucky that Boxall was there to save the day. Boxall had a good game too. Aside like
Yeah.
before that PK on Ostrak, like he had a good amount of clearances. Was basically the defensive leader for Minnesota. Um, Before that PK, and we were actually talking about it, like this guy is
Yeah.
everywhere, like all the clearances, like all the interceptions, even cleared that one from the goal line. So Minnesota, good defensive team too, but City doing everything right, and I like to see Klaus involved in the box where he is best. So far things were looking really well.
Well, and that's the thing to keep in mind too, is because there's a comment in the chat, and it's a valid comment about the fouling that City had. Feels like the constant fouling is a result of lack of fitness. You get tired, you foul instead of playing good defense. We only had 1 yellow card, so fouling, you could argue that we had enough fouls, but as far as the those that rise to the point of a card, we were tied with yellow cards in this match. Boxall and Wallum. Boxall's led to the penalty. And then Wallum, I'm sorry, Marcanic had the yellow card in the second half. Boxall's wasn't even a card. It was just a foul on Ostrak. We had Marcanic get the card in the second half, and then Conrad Wallum at the beginning of the second half as well. That will earn him a suspension. But I thought that at times it seemed like it was magnified in the fouling just because of what happened in the second half. Minnesota had just, I mean, that's what Minnesota does too, as well. They try to earn these fouls. They try to go down easier because they're so good at the
Hmm.
set pieces. They're good at free kicks. Then that's part of their game. They intend to do that kind of a thing. I don't want to necessarily give City too much credit and say that they're above that, but with the speed and what they're trying to do in earning corner kicks as their primary means of free kicks, it seems like they tried to earn less fouls, if that makes sense a little bit.
Hmm.
In general, though, Boxall had a great game, like you were saying, but he did make that critical moment at 35, which did change the game. Tomas Ostrak is the one who earned the PK, drawing a foul from Boxall, dribbling into the box in that box-to-box role as a midfielder, and then Leuven converted on the PK. It felt like time stood still to me on the Edu Leuven PK, where I don't know if he just took a few extra breaths to compose himself, but I don't know. Did you have that sense of it just time kind of seemed to freeze in that moment where Leuven was standing there?
Yeah, I was like, oh, he's thinking about it. I don't know what he's seeing from Sinclair, but yeah, it looked like a few
Yeah.
seconds went by before he took the shot.
And that was the biggest thing that happened at the obviously in the first half, but first half ended with a one nothing score. We dominated pretty much every stat category. We talked about possession, we talked about the field tilt. XG was one, shots on target were one. But then the second half started, and it seemed, Santi, because I want to know your opinion on how you thought the second half started, because to me, I said it was 50-50. It was the momentum wasn't in any one team's favor. Looking at the shots, you had almost an even amount of shots in the second half that started it off. Minnesota had 2 shots in the first 10 minutes or so, Marcanic and Rosales, and then Marcel Hartl had a shot at 58, and then it all kind of started to fall apart or change after that. St. Louis, the biggest problem I had is that St. Louis had no shots in general for 35 minutes in the second half, from 59 to 90 plus 4. Minnesota had 3 shots plus their 2 PKs, so 5 total during this time period. But from Marcel Hartl's shot at 58 till we started had the flurry of shots in stoppage time, we had nothing. And I know most of this time was spent down to 10 men, but that's part of the problem, is that we went down and that kind of crippled our ability to generate an offense. But if you go 30, and we've talked about this before, this is not the first time St. Louis has had this kind of an issue in the second half where they go huge stretches of time without any even shot on target, not just shot on target, but just a shot in general, whether it's blocked, missed, wide, whatever. 35 minutes from 59 to 90 plus 4 without a single shot.
Yeah, and that has happened a few times this year. You can't go for so long without chances created, shots on goal. Just gives the
Yeah.
other team more possibilities to turn the game around, especially the beginning of the second half. If you are in a winning position, yeah, Minnesota like made a couple of substitutions, and as you mentioned, became more of a 50-50 battle. But uh, up to the foul that led into that PK, I think City was doing things well. They were still controlling the game,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, just can't go so long. And yeah, you factor in the being down 10 men, but still, like, if you don't create anything, you're gonna suffer for most of those 30-35 minutes.
All right, Santi, let's talk about the thing that you and I have been wanting to talk about since we realized we had a difference of opinion right before we started the show. The substitutions at the 63rd minute. Chris Durkin and Simon Betcher came in for Devin Padelford and Songbin Zhang. This moved Haziel Orozco to left back. Chris Durkin took center back, and Simon Betcher took that right mid 1-for-1 sub with Songbin. You start us off. What did you make of this sub, good or bad?
So when I saw Dorkin and Betcher getting ready to come in, Dorkin, the first thing that came to mind, I was like, okay, maybe Ostrak is gonna come out, or Leuven, because it was his first
Mm-hmm.
start. And yeah, Chrisley have talked about ramping up minutes for him. I was like, okay, maybe this is it for Leuven or Ostrak, because he has also been subbed out. He hasn't completed a 90-minute match recently. So I was like, okay, man for man, no issue there. And then Becher, like same thing. I was like, okay, is he gonna come for Klaus? But Klaus doesn't seem tired. He has been doing things well. So I had a question mark why I was like, who is he gonna come in for? And then he came in for Sam Bing, and played in that right wing role, right midfielder, which I don't think is the best role for him. So I didn't
Yeah.
like that. And then on Dorkin's substitution, he goes in as a center back. Jaciel Orozco was playing well there, and yeah, it looked like a pedal for needed to come out. And yeah, it looked like a good move, but in hindsight, and obviously you can say a lot of things after the game, especially after what happened. But if you are sliding Orozco into left back, you also have other center backs on the bench. You have JGR, you have Kyle Heaver. So to me, Dorkin didn't look as the best option, especially because it was his first game coming back from injury.
Yeah.
So that's what I was telling you earlier, that I didn't like the substitutions, especially the Dorky one, just because you had other center backs you could have used there.
Well, so you're not wrong on any of those points. And I do think the one issue I have maybe is that Durkin's first game back in this, it was a risk to put him in at center back. I suppose you could argue it would be a risk to put him in anywhere, with it being his first game back and rusty and high pressure situations, down one goal. So that could apply anywhere. The other thing that I think I want to point out is that under David Critchley, it almost seems like Chris Durkin is preferred as a center back because we have other midfield options. Look back to Durkin's last appearance against San Jose on May 31st. He played center back. I think I'm not saying Critchley exclusively wants to use Durkin as a center back, because against Colorado, he played as a central midfielder. But I do think that this, to me, was more of an indication of overall quality and who can play what position. Meaning that if you're looking at, okay, I have Chris Durkin, Kyle Hebert, and JGR available to use, just in general, take positioning out of it for a quick second. If you look at those three players, is there any doubt of which player you would prefer to have on the field? Kyle Hebert, JGR, or Chris Durkin?
Based on experience and the couple of times he had played center back, yeah, Dorkin.
Well, even besides positioning, just like take the player, like the quality of the player is where I'm going first. Not even positioning. So if you were just told that, we need to sub out somebody and we can bring in Chris Durkin, Kyle Hebert, or JGR, what quality of player would you prefer? And would it be Chris Durkin 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 times?
Yes, but you also have to consider he was coming back from injury. That's a
Yes, I
wild
agree
card
with
there.
that. And the next step is you do have to take positioning into it, right? So JGR, to me, JGR has the potential to be as quality of a player. I would never take Kyle Hebert over Chris Durkin. That's my opinion, and no matter where you put him on the field. But my point in this line of conversation is, I feel this is now just Durkin's one mistake here is now clouding our thought of Chris Durkin at center back, because I recall every single other time Durkin has appeared at center back, it's been Durkin's done great. Oh, we can use him at center back. This is fantastic. It's the flexibility, it's the tactics. Durkin, and when he played against San Jose in that win, the roaming center back, his ability to cover space, the vision, the awareness, the quality was there. And this was prior to his injury. So that's one thing, prior to missing time. So yes, you're right on that. But Durkin is not a bad center back, is my point. The issues of Critchley putting Durkin in at that and using Durkin as a center back, they seem to be discounting the other 2, 3, or 4 times that Durkin has played center back for us that they've gotten pretty rave reviews each time. And I do believe we've won more matches than we've lost with
Yeah,
Durkin at
but
center back.
the times he have been used at center back, if I recall correctly, has been more out of necessity because you had a lot of injuries and you needed to put somebody there. And yeah, he did well, but I just don't think coming back from injury with such high stakes, because obviously, even though we know that making playoffs even before yesterday would have been really hard. This was basically the last chance, like a must-win game, and you're up 1-0. I don't know. To me, just bringing a
Yeah,
player back from injury in that situation
that's
is not
fair.
is not is not a good decision. And yeah, it ended up
Yeah.
changing the game because of what happened 10 minutes later. I also want to go back to the Sambing substitution, and we were talking earlier
Okay.
about Jan de Silva. Why not him?
Hmm.
Why not him instead of Becher? Or you could have even inserted Totland as right back and moved Conrad Wallem in that position where Sambing was. But I don't think Becher was the
Hmm.
best substitution there.
I think we're seeing Betcher more and more as not a viable option on the right side. I think it was a good theory, a good thought to try for a period of time, but he's not doing anything more in that role than he was as a striker before. And it could be just Betcher in general this year is underperforming no matter where he is on the field, not unlike Cedric Toyshirt in a lot of ways. But continuing to run Simon Betcher on that right side isn't really producing as much as we thought it would after that. In the first couple of games where in defense he was on the right side, but then in attack he was kind of trying to press higher than Klaus. That's not working. And I think that you have to learn that lesson over a period of a couple games and realize that it's not. So you need to try something different. And it does seem, again, even with that sub, that John da Silva is just not a preferred option anywhere on the field. You would rather play a player that you perceive has a better quality in general, Simon Betcher over John da Silva, out of position than put John da Silva in at a winger position. And it's, you could argue where that on the right side would be out of position for Silva, and you probably aren't wrong, but that's where we've played him in general. And it seems like that is a depth chart question, not unlike the Durkin over Hebert and JGR, where it's the player, no matter where they are on the field, that's valued. And that's just how Critchley has been approaching it. And I think other coaches have approached similar things. Like Hackworth played Durkin at center back as well. So it's not just a Critchley thing. I think that to me speaks to the versatility and just wanting certain players on the field over certain other players. Aaron noted in the chat that if you want to hold a lead, Kyle Hebert might not be a bad option at center back, all things considered. So when I talked about players in general, regardless of positioning, regardless of the flow of the match, that's a question. But when you take those factors in, maybe you do look at certain players that possess certain qualities that would better affect a match given the state of the match, as opposed to just saying Durkin is a better option in general. He's a better quality player in general, so we're going to put him in no matter what. That's a really good point that I think needs to be included in the conversation of, was this a good sub or not? Beyond that, Santi, it was just 9 minutes until Durkin earned his red card. And, I don't want to harp too much on it, but was there any doubt in your mind that was a PK and a red card? Or because before I get that, Justin Horniker, our friend, asked Pro and got a clarification on the reasoning for both the PK and the red card, and quote, there was a clear pull of the attacker's shoulders with no attempt to play the ball, raising this offense to dogzo, a denial of an obvious goal-scoring opportunity by holding, which is a red card offense and not a yellow. So it was not just the foul in the box. The foul in the box earned the PK. It was the fact that Durkin made no attempt to play the ball in the referee's eyes, and he immediately went to a red card. So this was an immediate decision by the ref where he saw just Durkin pulling, no attempt to play the ball. And I think we talked before we started recording that, to me, this was the play that led to that, or the pass from Marcanic into Yeboah that led to this play. Bad timing by Durkin. You could look at it as rust. You could look at it as whatever you want to look at, but Yeboah had a quicker reaction when the ball was crossed in, it hit the ground and then bounced off Yeboah's chest. So it bouncing off his own chest, he seemed to react quicker to it and made a move around Durkin to follow the ball. Whereas Durkin, I think, for a split second, had to gather where the ball was. And he more played Yeboah at that point than he did ever play the ball, because Yeboah knew where the ball was going. Durkin, I don't think he did in that moment because of where the ball bounced. And so he was in the position he was in, and he made the call to pull him, seemingly because Yeboah would have had not an open shot, but a more clear 1v1 against Berkey.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate play. And yeah, I was doubting too about the red card, but yeah, I saw on the notes from the team about the question that was asked, and you mentioned that Justin also posted about it. So yeah, it is the rule, and I think the referee interpreted it well, and he didn't hesitate to show the red card, and he let the video assistants to do their thing and go back and look at it, and they confirmed the decision.
That's that was the biggest game changer to me. There was obviously Haziel Orozco's handball that led to a second PK, and that was just the sequence happened, and then the play occurred, and the fans who were around me, I was inundated with Minnesota fans around me for some reason. Yeah, I was sitting in my regular seats for this one, and I had Minnesota fans almost all around me who had bought up seats on the secondary market. So that was kind of jarring of an experience to watch this game. It was very unique to be in my home stadium surrounded by visiting fans. But as soon as Orozco touched the ball with his arm, they were all screaming for handball, and they were for a period of time. So as soon as it went to VAR, kind of knew what was about to happen. And Yeboah converted a second goal via PK. The other notable thing to me that happened after Durkin left was substitution choices down a man. You bring in JGR, Alfredo Morales, and Cedric Toyshirt in for Leuven, Ostrak, and Klaus. You basically reshape your entire midfield. You move Simon Betcher up top. Toyshirt takes that right mid role, which again, same thing. I mean, you don't put Silva in. You put Toyshirt in out of position on the wide side again. It's just there's a problem with the players on your roster and that right midfield role, because if Songbin may be the option, he may be the guy, and that's great. But now you have a problem of Betcher and Toyshirt, pretty quality players in their own right, just their only other place is centrally, and you have Klaus and Hartl that are not going anywhere. So with this move, I saw it go to like a 4-1-4, where you're having your back line of Orozco, Baumgartel, JGR, and Wallem. Alfredo Morales is the one midfielder, and then you have your attackers of Betcher, Toyshirt, Hartl, and Salio. Kind of broke the connection. The lines were not, they didn't play well together, on top of the fact that Minnesota was up a man, and so they dictated the pace and the possession. They were fine just controlling the ball and not really doing much with it. They didn't have a lot of bite to their attack in the second half. They only had, I think it was 0.28 XG in the second half for Minnesota outside of the PKs. So they didn't generate much with their 60% possession in the second half. They didn't need to generate much, especially after that second goal. And St. Louis really didn't have much of a good stable formation. They didn't have a good tactical plan to beat Minnesota down a man, changing it up to
it was just like let's put numbers at top and see what we can do. But as you mentioned, you lost the connection in midfield, and you could see it when Minnesota got the ball. Like they had a lot of space, and at times they were not even, especially towards the end, they basically just wanted to keep possession, not even interested in created chances. But they had a lot of space just because City basically went for it. I think Critchley realized, like, well, let's put guys up front, see if we can rescue these 3 points, because we know 1 point is not gonna be enough. So that's my take. But yeah, you left yourself vulnerable, and at the same time you have a lot of guys at top, but you don't have a way to connect with them. So in the end, it was one of those, like, oh, the tactical goes out the window, and let's see what we can create with some long balls and just fighting in the box to win that second ball and get rebounds, but just wasn't enough.
No, it wasn't enough, and it never really up until the dying minutes of stoppage, we really didn't have any attempts. Like I said, no shots for 35 minutes into stoppage. We ended with a
Mm-hmm.
flurry, so I think there was a spark of hope and excitement there at the end. Guys like Timo Baumgartel got in on the action. Cedric Toyshirt had a shot, but 4 shots in the 3-minute period to end the game just wasn't enough, and St. Louis can't rely on a last second hopeful
No.
onslaught to try to salvage a point. And that's what this was. So we end the game, we lose, we fall to 4-14-6. We're still on 18 points in 24 matches now. We finished this week, Santi, tied on points with CF Montreal and two points ahead of the LA Galaxy for the
Hey,
Wooden
September
Spoon.
19 could be the wooden spoon game between Montreal and St. Louis.
Yikes. City is now 12 points out of a 9th place playoff spot in the West with 10 games to go. We are even 6 points behind the next closest team in the West for 13th place, that being Sporting KC, who also lost this week. Now we have a 2-week break from MLS action. Leagues Cup kicks off this week. If you didn't remember that, you would be forgiven easily because St. Louis is not in that tournament this year because of the way MLS orchestrated the other cup tournaments. We had our U.S. Open Cup appearance as one of the, I guess, bottom half teams in MLS from last year. Leagues Cup opens on Tuesday of this week, and so MLS is not taking a month-long break this time. They're just taking a week off so that the group stage matches of this cup can take place. So the Leagues Cup starts Tuesday. They will have 3 match days through Thursday, August 7th, before resuming MLS regular season play on Saturday, August 9th, where City faces Nashville at home. But first, I think we've gone a long time in this episode, and I did not intend to go this long talking about Minnesota. We do have a match this week. Wednesday, we welcome Premier League's Aston Villa to Energizer Park. And while it may be a fun environment, it'll be an exciting match to welcome Aston Villa. I can't help but juxtapose this to the previous international friendly, City 2 hosting Bayer Leverkusen in the fall of 22. Differences in weather, differences in excitement. Santi, let's look really quick. So I want to give folks just a really quick insight into Aston Villa as our preview of that match. But what do you think we can expect when it comes to City? On City's side, what are your expectations for the lineup and just overall that we would
So first
show
I want to
against Aston
clarify
Villa?
the wooden spoon game is September 13, that game against Montreal. But I think for that Aston Villa game, and Lutz, I had Lutz for halftime last week. It was a pre-recorded interview, but he said, yeah, it's a good
Mm-hmm.
chance for fans to see the new guys. That's what I was hoping. Falu at least maybe he will be there, but not be able to play, but at least be able to wave up the crowd. But I think it's also a good chance to maybe see first some of the guys who haven't had a lot of minutes, maybe also give a chance to some of the CD2 players or even some academy guys. Like for European teams, this is preseason and they tend to make a lot of substitutions. Also, give a chance to their young players. So we could see the same from City, and yeah, it's a midweek game, so maybe rest some of the players that play 90 minutes this week. Give a chance to other guys. Just thinking, and obviously this is after the game. Like this could have been a good opportunity for Chris Dorkin to get minutes and come back instead of putting him in that situation last night. But yeah, I think it's a friendly. I'm not a big fan of friendlies against European teams because it's preseason for them. Have never been a big fan of those, especially like the few that have come to St. Louis. You see a lot of substitutions, and sometimes the biggest stars don't play. To me, it would be interesting to see if if Emiliano Martinez plays. He didn't play last night. They tied 2-2 against
Right.
Eintracht Frankfurt, and he didn't
Frankfurt.
feature. Maybe they were keeping him for Wednesday, but I know a lot of people are excited about him possibly coming to
Yes.
Energizer Park.
I want to give a special shout out to Malia Dunbar, our friend with the Luligans, who is a diehard Aston Villa fan. I saw her before the match yesterday, and she was just beaming with excitement. I am excited for every Villa fan in the St. Louis area to be able to see their Premier League team in their home stadium. It might be a once in a lifetime experience to see them in this format like that, but not every that chance doesn't come around. So I'm just excited for the spectacle of it all, and for those Villa fans in St. Louis, because it's going to be really fun. For everybody else who might not be following Aston Villa as closely, Villa finished sixth in the Premier League last year. They made a Champions League run that ended in the quarterfinals. And this past season, because they finished sixth, they qualified for the Europa League next season. So they're still playing European football this coming year. You mentioned, Santi, they played Frankfurt on Saturday. They had a 2-2 draw, goals scored by Ollie Watkins and Morgan Rogers. Villa took a pretty good lineup into that matchup. Ollie Watkins starting with them. And if you don't know Ollie Watkins, you'll probably know him on Wednesday because he is their attacking threat, their biggest attacking threat of multiple players, including Rogers. Ollie Watkins has 87 goals and 41 assists in 5 seasons with Aston Villa. 87 goals, 41 assists in 5 seasons. Tremendous numbers in general, and just eclipsing everything that St. Louis has ever had to offer in our attacking threat. Rogers, the other goal scorer, Morgan Rogers, was the second. He was second to Ollie Watkins on their team with 14 goals last season. Rogers wears the 27. Watkins wears the 11. If you're watching for those players, you have a lot of other notable players for Aston Villa, and that includes Yuri Tielemans, their number 8, who, goal scoring aside, I would argue may be their best player. Aston Villa in general, they like to build from the back. Their goalkeepers and defenders are encouraged to play out from the back using short, controlled passes. They like to progress the ball up the pitch in that way. They are very patient. They move the ball through the lines, waiting for the right moment to exploit gaps. They will draw in an opponent's press. So that'll be something interesting to watch, is how St. Louis chooses to press and whether Villa invites the press and then attempts to work around or through that. They are very structured and confident in their buildup, almost to a fault, I would say. They're very controlled under manager Unai Emery. They don't overexert themselves. And Emi Martinez, who you mentioned, Santi, if he plays, Emi Martinez has ranked at the very top of the Premier League in time spent on the ball in the past couple of years. He's very intentional, very measured. He draws in opponents himself, and it honestly allows their team to rest in possession. And this is where it's almost to a fault, because they spend most of their possession time in their own third, their defensive third. So they invite pressure, but they're so incredibly patient that it might be one of those frustrating moments where they just sit back with the ball. They make the defense come to them, and then they play off of that press deep into their zone. Villa typically employs a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-4-2 especially, and I think they ran a 4-4-2 against Frankfurt on Saturday. They've got fluidity in the attack. They maintain a strong defensive position. They have a double pivot in the midfield. I mentioned Tielemans, and Onana is their other midfielder, providing balance. Villa controls the central areas. So if you remember earlier, we talked about the inability to break down the central areas against Minnesota from City. Villa has a really strong midfield. So not just how Villa will play on the ball, but how St. Louis will manage another tight midfield with really high quality players. That's going to be something to watch. Unai Emery likes to press. They like to win the ball high up the field, but they do have a good balance. Ollie Watkins leads the forward line. He combines pace and work rate. He's a very strong player on both sides, but Villa themselves are willing to drop back, especially if they get a lead. That's the thing to watch, is they will drop back into a medium to low block if they gain a lead. They're not going to all out press every single moment of this match. Their attack does go through some dynamic wings. They exploit wide areas. Leon Bailey, Jacob Ramsey, they stretch defenses. They've got fullbacks like Matty Cash, who played on Saturday alongside Jacob Ramsey. They push forward with width in their fullback areas. They use these quick, short passes and combinations to move the ball up the field. So City is going to be in for a pretty rough contest if they can't play the ball and anticipate where Villa is going to be moving off the ball with their players, because those short passes can be a big problem for City. The compact, tight defensive shape, especially in the midfield, that's going to be a problem for City. And I think this one in general, just with the high level of competition and the strong lineup that Villa is going to bring in, I do wonder if we're going to see a pretty strong City lineup, all things considered. I am not expecting, personally, a City 2 roster to show up. I'm not expecting loans to guys like Jääskeläinen and McSorley in that group. But there could be rotation depending on fitness because it's only 4 days later. But at the same time, you have a week and a half off after that until your next competitive game. So I could see it both ways. I could see a few players getting a rest. I could see some players slotting in. But overall, I would expect St. Louis to launch a pretty strong lineup and just see what they can throw out.
Do you have
against this
to
Premier League
do a
giant.
formal loan from City 2 for a game like this?
I think you
Right.
it's a friendly, so no, actually, I don't think so. I should have looked this up ahead of time, but I think all the roster rules
Yeah,
relate to
no,
official
I would
competitions.
say no, but
and it included Chris Durkin can play. So that was the question Joseph Illiff had in the chat. Can Durkin play versus Aston Villa? Yes. His red card suspension is MLS play or official competition play, and it will be invoked against Nashville. So he's unavailable for Nashville, but Durkin can play. Wallem can play as well. He's suspended for yellow card accumulations for Nashville because of his yellow. Both of them will be available and not suspended against Villa. Other things I want to mention really quick. Falu Fall, not here yet. He's not going to play. Other injuries that we took in, Henry Kessler, Joachim Nilsson, I would not expect them to play at all against Villa. So a pretty similar lineup in availability is who we could take into Villa. And this may be an opportunity to get some time for some of our better, quote unquote, better players, better on paper players who might not have been in good form, but also haven't been playing a ton. I'm thinking Cedric Toyshirt. Do I want to say Jean
I
de
was
Silva?
gonna go
Yes,
there.
I want to say Jean de Silva. But again, this is a situation where if I see him, I'm not going to be surprised, but I'm not going to speculate on seeing him because I haven't seen it yet. And it's that thing that Critchley has to show me that he's willing to play Jean de Silva before I'm willing to project him into a starting lineup. He's not there yet. So why would he be there? But at the same time, maybe it's an opportunity to get players like that, like Toyshirt, like Silva, into better form so they can carry some kind of confidence into the last 10 games of the season.
Maybe there is some rotation in the second half. We can even see Simon Becher as a number 9.
Which we saw at the very end of the game against Minnesota. And honestly, give a go to some of those players in their more natural positions, right? Have JGR start at center back. Would love to see that. Whether it's Timo or Hebert alongside of him or even Orozco alongside of him. JGR and Orozco as a center back combo.
Give it a try,
why not? Like that, talk about playing your kids. Let's see a 3 of our 4-man back line under the age of 23 years old, 22 years old. Padelford, Orozco, and JGR as 3 of our 4-man back line. Big fan. Run it out. See what you can offer against Villa. Anything else, Villa or otherwise, Santi, before we get out of here?
No, I think we covered enough, extended a little bit today, but good conversation as always.
Yeah, that's what happens. We have a midweek match to preview and want to get as much as we can out there on the other side of another disappointing loss. So for Santiago Beltran, my name is Matt Baker. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Fallout, looking at a 2-1 loss against Minnesota. And we turn the page with this Villa preview to try and get a little bit of excitement building into Wednesday's match at Energizer Park. It may be a stormy night, but I think there can be momentum to build off of. Even if you're not looking at the playoffs, you're just supporting your team. You're wanting to see improvement in quality on the field. There are plenty of players who are itching for that opportunity. Jake Girdwood-Reich, we know, wants to earn himself a spot. That's his goal this year. Maybe we see more playing time from him on Wednesday. Orozco's, the handball aside, everything else has been great about him. And so we want to see more of him. Padelford's ingrained himself, seeing more Songbin if he can go. A lot of things that could be exciting and a great opportunity against the highest level competition that we're going to face. A strong Villa side we expect. Villa, against Frankfurt on Saturday, they had a good lineup. Will Emi Martinez be there? Will Ollie Watkins make another start after 4 games? We'll see, but we'll be excited nonetheless. So thank you for joining us on Flyover Footy. Good luck to City against Aston Villa. If you're going to the game, have fun. If you're not, it's going to be aired on Fox 2 locally. So it's on network TV. Watch it if you're not able to go. Have fun.
Vamos, City.
And we'll talk to you later. All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in after a loss. Like always, you guys are the real heroes for giving us this platform and opportunity to talk and be willing to talk and look at our club that we all love, even after a frustrating loss like this. But, Aston Villa comes to town this week. It is an exciting time.
Yeah. Looking forward to, especially if Emi Martinez plays. it'll be exciting. But yeah, I want to see. Yeah, probably
Yeah,
start with a strong lineup, but probably after the 60th, 70 minute, we'll see some guys, and maybe some City 2 guys or some young guys. We'll see. We'll see how City handles this game, but hopefully it'll be competitive for the first 45 at least.
absolutely, absolutely. And as long as it's competitive in some way, I don't think anybody's really expecting City to win, but yeah, especially with Villa coming out with a fairly strong lineup and a strong roster that they brought over. But it'll be fun nonetheless to watch. Hope everybody enjoys it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for tuning in,
Bye,
guys.